Well, this is good news. So on November 29th on HBO and HBO Max, there is a music documentary called Yacht Rock. So HBO has this series called Music Box. Fantastic series. They have a lot of different documentaries. And it's been gone for a while. So I forgot about it. And now we're gonna have one on Yacht Rock. When you think of Yacht Rock, it's basically like the Doobie Brothers, Michael McDonald, Kenny Loggins, Toto, Carly Simon, probably a little bit of Hall and Oates, Playa, probably a little bit of the Doobie Brothers. Like it was just that period between like the mid 70s until like the early 80s, which they later recall adult contemporary. But some guy came up with the name Yacht Rock, and I get the idea of branding it that way because when you think of heavy metal, you think of certain acts. When you think of grunge, you think of certain acts. So I understand it from a pop music standpoint. You have to label it something. I never like the name because most average people I think who owns yachts think they're cool, but they're not really. They're like, oh, look how cool I am. I got a yacht. It just means you got a lot of money. People who sing yacht rock, they are cool. In fact, to be honest, the proper term would probably be soulful white folk. Michael McDonald, Daryl Hall, soulful. Because most of these people, when they sang, they had a lot of soul in them. It's not just like Michael McDonald and Daryl Hall. Like even if you listen to hell, Lou Graham from Foreigner, or you listen to like Steven Tyler from Aerosmith, there's a soulfulness in their vocal. Joe Cocker, there's soul inside of them. And I think that's because of what happened in the 60s. I made a video a while ago where I talked about how Bruce Springsteen, he is the perfect melding of like Elvis and the Beatles, Bob Dylan, and James Brown, because the way he conducts his band and talks to his band in concert is reminiscent of James Brown. He is the conductor, right? The hardest working man in show business, that whole thing, right? Where for most young white kids listening to music in the 60s, you got like Elvis and the Beatles and the Stones and mixed in a little Frank Sinatra, the Kinks, Jimi Hendrix down the road. But then you also have James Brown and Aretha Franklin, Motown, Stax, later Philly International. So you have this convergence of these really super successful white acts from rock, which was from rock and blues. And then on the other side, you have all this great soul music, the instrumentation, the vocals. So when you hear a lot of white singers in the 70s, there's a soulful bent to their vocal. Like the same thing like you listen to the Bee Gees, there's a soulful bent to their vocal, even though they was influenced by those, but there's a soulful bent to them, right? So when we get to this thing, when we get to Yacht Rock, it's very cool music. It's kind of mellowish at times, but it's very soulful. So there's a point in this series. Okay, the reason I'm smiling so much, there's going to be a 5 degrees of Kevin Bacon moment in this series. Because there's one artist who's connected to a lot of different people in this documentary. Because I've never seen it, but I'm thinking that's how it's going to go. And that guy is Michael McDonald. Now, Michael McDonald did not start Yacht Rock. He didn't start it, but he's a big part of it. So Michael McDonald was part of Steely Dan, which is also part of Yacht Rock. He played in their band. He leaves. He joins the Doobie Brothers as the lead vocalist because their lead vocalist was gone. They needed a new lead vocalist. He changes the sound of the band, and then they just take off. They were already a successful band as is because they was more like a southern rockish type band. But then when they just take off, when he makes a little bit more R&B, they just completely take off. But by doing so, at the end, it didn't work out between Michael McDonald and the Doobie Brothers, because the Doobie Brothers at their base was a southern rock band. And even though they had all the success with Michael, I think there was like culture clash. Like, who are we musically? Not that they're fine now. Like Michael comes back, they tour with Michael, they tour about Michael. It's they have a great relationship now. But once we got around like the early 80s, things were kind of tenuous. So when people think of the Doobie Brothers and Michael McDonald, they think of What the Fools Believe, Minute by Minute, Taking It to the Streets, and then they jump to I Keep Forgettin, the great solo track by Michael McDonald. Well, there's this part in the middle where Michael McDonald was working with a lot of different people, and these are songs that you either heard, that you probably already heard, but you didn't know he was part of it. So it was like Run Like the Wind from Christopher Cross. There's a great skit from SCTV where Rick Moranis, he's playing Michael McDonald, and he's driving to the studio, and the song is going, and he just jumps into the booth and says, "Just the wrong way to go," and he jumps out, has a cigarette, and sings like, "Just the wrong way to go." That's all that Michael McDonald does on that song, but it makes the song even better. He co-writes "You Belong to Me" with Carly Simon. That's a great tune. And then there's the trifecta. There's a trifecta of Kenny Loggins songs. So there's part one and part two. Part one. So Kenny Loggins was with this really good. He had a partner, Messina. So it was Loggins Messina. They break up. Kenny Loggins then goes solo. On one of his solo albums, he has a song called "What Do Fools Believe." And then the Doobie Brothers, for some reason, I don't know how it happens, they remake the song. So that's a hit for them. Big hit. Kenny Loggins is on the credit and all that stuff. Then Michael McDonald and Kenny Loggins write two great songs together. They write Heart to Heart and This Is It. Whenever I'm feeling down and I just feel like the world is against me, that's one of the tracks I put on. It's just a great uplifting song. You just feel like you can just take on the world. And I think the story of those songs where Kenny Loggins' parents, I think, was divorcing and his dad was having a tough time because he didn't see it coming. And This Is It is just Kenny Loggins like pumping up his dad. Make no mistake who you are. Going up, baby. Oh, my parents loved Kenny Loggins during that time period, man. They did not like Footloose and they did not like Danger Zone. But they loved that Kenny Loggins. And then Heart to Heart. Early this summer, I was just listening to Heart because the long version, I think, it features David Sanborn, like a young David Sanborn on saxophone. Heart to Heart. Maybe when the edge don't stop with. Oh my God. Heart to Heart is so good. Oh my God. If you said the only thing I can listen to is like some couple of these two Kenny Loggins songs for the rest of my life, yeah, I might get tired of it after a while, but oh my God. So that's the part one trifecta. What Do Fools Believe, Heart to Heart, and This Is It. Part two of that is Heart to Heart, This Is It, and I'm All Right. I'm All Right, Michael McDonald had nothing to do with it, but it's a great one of those great yacht rock songs from Caddyshack. I'm All Right is just fantastic. Kenny Loggins at that point from like 78 to 80 could do no wrong. Another story from that, it has nothing to do with Michael McDonald, is Toto. Toto made that song Rosanna. Toto was great. A few of those guys ended up working on Michael Jackson's Thriller with Quincy Jones, because Quincy Jones knew those guys. There's that song Rosanna. There's different stories. The one story is the guy who wrote the song wrote about different women. But the main story is that song was written about Rosanna Arquette. She dated the keyboard player of the band. I love that song because even the lead singer, even though he didn't date Rosanna Arquette, he said that the lyric was, "I never thought that losing you would hurt so bad." It's like, this dude didn't even date Rosanna Arquette. He was like, he's even crying like, "I didn't want to lose you, babe." It's fantastic. Man, I don't even know what Rosanna Arquette was doing back then, but she must have been the greatest girlfriend in the world, because then she dated Peter Gabriel in the mid 80s and he wrote in Your Eyes to her. Like, my wheelhouse is Rosanna Arquette. I mean, Patricia Arquette. I knew Patricia, but that Rosanna Arquette, that big sister, I don't know what she was doing, but man, to have two songs written about you were doing something right. Shout out to Rosanna Arquette. But yeah, so this thing is so great. And I started thinking, like, why do I like this music so much? It's because my mom. Like, growing up, going with your mom, my mom would listen to like WKR and she loves R&B. She loved the OJs and all that stuff. But we would be in the car and WKR would play like the Doobie Brothers and the Eagles and Chris Christopherson and Willie Nelson and Barbra Streisand. So the reason I got this ear, this is not fake to me. Like, I felt weird growing up because I felt like, yeah, the MTV generation was one thing. We all watched the same stuff, but I had this other stuff. Like I was the only black dude that kind of liked Barbra Streisand. I was the only dude, man, that kind of like Black Sabbath and things. Black Sabbath was at my mom's thing, but I'm just saying, because my mom exposed me to like the Eagles and Doobie Brothers and all these people, it expanded my ear. So I do love a Nirvana. I do love a Black Sabbath. I do love house music. And that's because of my mom. Like, my mom did not like any of these other genres. She might have liked house music a little bit, but hard rock and all that stuff, that wasn't her thing. Her thing was R&B and yacht rock. So thank you to my mom for opening my ear. Because if it wasn't for her, I might not be making this video right now. Just the wrong way to go. So good.